Crusader Kings 3, the latest grand strategy game from genre pioneers Paradox, has me hooked. As the successor to the popular Crusader Kings 2, Crusader Kings 3 could have easily crumbled under the weight of fan expectations. Thanks to smart streamlining, more intelligent conveying of critical information, and a wickedly delightful role-playing game underlying the whole affair, Crusader Kings 3 is worthy of the crown. For the uninitiated, Crusader Kings 3 is a grand strategy game that kicks off in either 867 AD or 1066 AD, depending on what starting nation and ruler you choose to play as. There are a multitude of historical nations and rulers to play as, and nearly every legitimate religion from the medieval era is present. It's a dense game clearly built for history buffs, by history buffs, but that doesn't mean you're beholden to sticking to how things played out in reality. Nations can adopt cultures they barely made contact with in the real world, and every religion can be altered as needed to suit your ruler's needs. Or a whole new heresy can be established once you've farmed up enough religious clout. For such an intricate replication of history, Crusader Kings 3 is less about taking over every square inch of land and more about cementing a lineage and legacy that'll stand the test of time. You're not playing as a nation, not really, but as the ruler in charge of charting its course through history. You'll spend more time dealing with your vassals in court than commanding armies, as you try to ensure your family's dynasty is the one that comes out on top. Crusader Kings 3's emergent storytelling encourages role-playing to such a degree that its best moments often come from accepting and adapting to your losses, rather than min-maxing the perfect strategy for world domination. You could be going about arranging marriages for potential alliances that'll secure you more titles and territory when a story segment appears of your spy master warning you of a discovered plot to murder your son and heir. Depending on your ruler's personality traits and lifestyle, you'll have different ways to approach the situation. An intrigue-leaning ruler will be more effective at sowing their own plot to murder the offending party than a diplomatic king. Crusader Kings 3 is at its best when you lean into these little moments and step into your ruler's velvet pattens, because it feels like the world is generally responding to your actions. You don't simply play as a single ruler, but also as their heir when said ruler passes on. You can easily play a single campaign in Crusader Kings 3 and have controlled well over a dozen or more different rulers before the game's 1453 AD conclusion. In my first playthrough alone, I controlled a pious king who never missed a crusade, an intelligent diplomat who used arranged marriages and favorable schemes to keep her kingdom in check, and a tyrant who murdered enough babies to make Satan blush. Even with the deep role-playing woven into the very fabric of Crusader Kings 3's design, it's still a grand strategy game at its core. Paradox is well aware of how complicated their games can be, and they went well out of their way to make Crusader Kings 3 their most accessible title to date. Don't mistake accessible for watered down. Crusader Kings 3 is still a mind-disintegrating affair when approached blind. What separates it from its siblings like Stellaris is a healthy mix of streamlining and smart UI design. One seemingly small, yet impactful change was made to rally points. No longer do your levies migrate from their homes to the designated meetup point. Now all your troops appear at the rally point no matter where it's at in the world. You can set multiple rally points if you do need to split your forces or want to rapidly deploy to a handful of strategic locations, so the nuance hasn't been lost, just the hazardous travel that could leave whole segments of your army dead before it came together. Then there's the UI. There's an overwhelming amount of terminology and systems at play in Crusader Kings 3, so to help new and returning players sort through it all, Paradox integrated hyperlinked key terms within every tooltip that appears. Nearly every UI element spawns a tooltip, and with it more hyperlinks. It's easy to create a daisy chain of tooltips, but they serve their purpose well, whether you're a newcomer using them in tandem with the solid tutorial, or an old-timer looking to refresh their memory. These hyperlinked tooltips are always there when needed and easily ignored when not. It doesn't hurt that it's a relatively slick UI all around. The number of menu icons on the main HUD is actually somewhat minimal, at least when compared to other Paradox titles. The nesting doll tooltips and hyperlinks help cut down the bloat quite a bit, and Paradox has made good use of this nesting concept within the larger menus as well. Appreciated additions when there's an assortment of menus to dig through for one single point of data. The UI in Crusader Kings 3 goes well out of its way to ensure you're never lost for long, and Paradox made sure it was slick enough to not overwhelm at first glance. A more streamlined UI isn't the only thing Paradox added with their sequel. Crusader Kings 3 features quite a few new systems that either replace older ones from the previous games, or are unique to the third entry. Your ruler can now suffer from stress, which is generated by the death of loved ones, acting against their personality, and from adverse events that befall them. The more stress you accrue, the more dire the side effects. There are many ways to reduce stress as there are to gain it, and all fit within the emergent nature of Crusader Kings 3's storytelling. There are also talent trees now. They're called lifestyles, and each branch aligns with one of your 5 primary stats. If your ruler has a high diplomacy, they'll benefit from choosing the diplomacy branch. Within each are 3 focuses and 3 talent trees that further help you specialize your ruler. You can opt to focus on your family, be a better ruler, or become phenomenal in international relationships. Each tree has a variety of passives and active buffs that'll not only make your role-playing easier, but allow you to adapt to whatever situation you find yourself in. You're never locked into a single branch, and can change focus at any time, though you need to incur a heavy stress penalty if you choose to reset the talent trees within the branches. It's not the end of the world, but it further encourages you to lean into embracing your ruler's personality. Then there are the schemes and hooks. These replace the old reputation system and can be used to manipulate the people around you for both Puritan and malign purposes. Personal schemes are typically benign and range from simply swaying a bothersome embassy into liking you, to straight up seducing someone into becoming your lover. Hostile schemes are, well, hostile actions you can take against another character later, such as murdering them before they can come of age and inherit a collection of land claims that'll make your life miserable. Secret schemes are exactly what they sound like, schemes to dig up dirt on the other characters that you can either expose to ruin that person's reputation or give as blackmail that'll provide a potent hook for later use. These hooks are how you press others into going along with your requests when they otherwise wouldn't. A weak hook can only be used once, and is helpful at forcing smaller requests. A strong hook, on the other hand, doesn't go away upon use, and can convince even the most stubborn of individuals to bend to your will. You can earn hooks a variety of ways, from ransoming off prisoners to turning a blind eye to a courtier insulting one of your vassals. They're peppered throughout the story, though there are other ways to net valuable hooks, such as new scheme options unlocked within the intrigue skill tree. There's an incentive to collect these hooks because they can easily alter problematic vassal contracts, secure important marriages you'd otherwise miss, and more. Schemes and hooks work in tandem to create a captivating game of skullduggery and manipulation, allowing you to not only convincingly roleplay certain character types, but navigate difficult deals you may not have the money or reputation to pull off otherwise. All these systems come together to create an engaging role-playing game that just so happens to be a strategy game as well. You can easily jump rapidly between checking the stats and traits of your counselors to a story beat about finding your lost cat Lyle. It sounds like Whiplash on paper, but it's oh so good in execution. If the base experience is still too much for you to deal with, you can alter a variety of game options to make the gameplay closer to your preferences, which makes Crusader Kings 3 a remarkably malleable game. You can even swap characters at any time if your current ruler and nation are at a loss, so long as you're not playing with Iron Man mode. The core loop doesn't change much, but how you engage with it is entirely up to you. As for performance, I found the game murders your CPU when a host of armies are all running amok in a similar area, and the frame rate plummets further when you up the play speed. This scenario was only common during Crusades though, which make up a small portion of Crusader Kings 3's various wars. Battles with upwards of 15 participants ran somewhat well in context of similar games. Your frame rates will drop, but they're manageable and, more importantly, playable. AI could get wonky at times under load, but not in any way that broke the game. Performance is all the more admirable when you factor in the sharp new 3D portraits for every character that dynamically change due to age, gender, and heritage. Additionally, the map is more detailed, and battles feature improved animations that don't look like two dudes swinging savagely into the empty air. There's a running joke with Paradox games. They're not entirely finished until a year or so after launch. Crusader Kings 3 breaks this trend. It's a complete, well-rounded game. It doesn't have everything that's been added to Crusader Kings 2 over the years, yet in many ways it feels like Paradox took the best bits from their previous game and wove them into the most comprehensive launch yet. There are features that will end up in one of 20,000 DLC packs Paradox will inevitably create for the game, yet what's here now is more than enough to fuel hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, of backstabbing, dynasty building enjoyment. Crusader Kings 3 is perhaps Paradox's most accessible game to date. It's not any less complicated than previous entries, but it does a fantastic job explaining itself to new players, making it the best jumping on point for those who've always been interested in grand strategy games, but were turned off by their complexity and overwhelming depth. Crusader Kings 3's near-perfect marriage of robust grand strategy with compelling role-playing means both fans of meaty war games and storytelling aficionados will find something to love in its medieval world of politics and intrigue, whether that's crunching numbers to efficiently conquer the known world, or rolling with the punches as they scheme their way into the annals of history.